have a lot of questions. How does 2-in-1 shampoo work? Why can't I lift a chair that I'm sitting on? Who is that dog in the mirror? And why does he look like me? But thankfully, enough people have asked these questions that someone has finally done enough research to answer them. Most of them. Making scientific discoveries is rarely simple. Back in the day, it was pretty easy to be a scientist because you could say stuff like, when you move stuff, it moves. But there were also people who said stuff like, hey, maybe we should wash our hands before we perform surgery. So there were definitely some risks that came with the job. Nowadays, it's much safer, but it still rarely operates in the way that one might expect. Sometimes great discoveries are made while trying to solve an entirely different problem, and sometimes they're made almost by accident. Seeing some of the great advancements that have been made and then finding out how that journey started can be shocking to say the least. Yeah, I used to eat bees as a child, and now I've invented time travel. So here are some scientific discoveries that make me think, how did they do that? How did they get that one? How did they figure that out? Just how? Boy, this bakery sure has a lot of pastries. Congratulations, you've taken a giant leap towards the cure for cancer. In 2008, a small Japanese bakery had a problem. They were selling so many different types of pastries that they couldn't keep track of what each of them were. Dude, what is that? I don't know. So the bakery rang up a tech company for help, and the conversation went something like this. Please help us, we have too many pastries and I can't tell them apart. Can you build something to tell me what the pastries are automatically? Yeah. And so that's exactly what they did. The system would scan the pastries that the customers brought up to the front, identify each of them, and then add up the prices automatically. In fact, it did so well that they started selling the system to more bakeries and even started running ads to advertise their new technology. Then one day in 2017, an unnamed doctor who specialized in cancer research saw one of these ads and thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. Come to think of it, some of those pastries kind of look like cancer cells. Weird. And so the doctor called the tech company, they tweaked their system slightly, and bingo bango, they now have a system that can automatically identify cancer cells. The CEO of the tech company was later asked in an interview if they needed to implement some clever deep learning AI technology or something in order to make the change. And he simply just smiled and said, no, original way, same as bread. He's so cool. The next discovery that I want to talk about is the extinction of the dinosaurs versus some light in a dark. That's right, kids. Scientists were able to figure out that the dinosaurs were wiped out by an asteroid because they noticed a weird line in a rock. But it wasn't just any rock. This is strata. It's the name of the different geological layers of Earth from throughout history. Scientists have been studying strata for years because by analyzing the composition of each of the different layers, they're able to get a pretty good look at what life on Earth would have been like in the past. Hell yeah. The layers of strata that you can find are different depending on where you are. But one day, a team of scientists were looking at these layers from a bunch of different places on Earth, and they noticed that they actually all had something in common. This single layer is made of iridium clay, and for some reason, it is found in the strata of every single continent. What makes it even stranger is that iridium deposits are actually really rare, about 150 times rarer than gold. The team of scientists realized that this was a big and weird discovery, and so they decided that they were going to search day and night until they they figured it out. They noticed that the layer just below the iridium was already identified as the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary, which is the last geological layer from the time of the dinosaurs. Hell yeah. And suddenly, all the pieces started adding up. You see, up until the late 1970s, the leading theory of what caused the dinosaurs to go extinct was either a drought or some other natural disaster. But there was never anything more concrete than that. And after these scientists saw the layer of iridium, they thought that since iridium is so rare on Earth, what if it didn't come from Earth? They knew that although iridium is exceedingly rare on Earth, it is very commonly found in asteroids. Hell yeah. So they theorized that a large asteroid must have hit the Earth and vaporized, leaving debris of iridium clay all over the whole planet and leading to the extinction of the dinosaurs. And so they presented their findings. The last discovery that I want to talk about is this. Wow, look at all these wonderful products. I wonder how they got here. Ew. Yep, all this stuff came from beavers. Back in the times before people knew about soap, they knew about stink. They knew flowers smelled good and people smelled bad. They also knew that some animals smelled kind of alright, but they were definitely better than humans. So they would collect the oils and sweat from various animals and rub it on themselves to mask their own stink. And this is where the beaver comes in. Some people discovered that beavers left behind a smell that was kind of like a gentle mix between vanilla and raspberry. They also realized that they made great hats. So suddenly, beavers became a really hot commodity for anyone who wanted to look good or smell good. They eventually figured out that the smell came from the castor glands right next to the beaver's tail. And from these glands, they were able to extract a substance known as castorium. A little bit of context before this next part. You see, back in the day, the scientific method was largely dominated by a single practice that has now been translated into modern English as, let's just throw some shit at the wall and see what sticks. And that method led to humanity discovering that castorium is actually pretty useful. Not only is it useful for making fragrances, but it was also a homeopathic remedy for treating things like fever, gout, headaches, earaches, toothaches. Wow, that's a lot of aches. At the time, they didn't know why it worked, but for some reason, the beavers just had a magical medicine butt. Fast forward a few years, and scientists have discovered that castorium contains salicylic acid, which is the main ingredient used in aspirin. Another discovery that somebody made with castorium was that since it smelled good, maybe it would taste good too. And luckily for that person, they happened to be correct. I don't even want to know what the trial and error for testing that would have been like. But the substance found its way into a bunch of different foods and beavers were suddenly more popular than ever. In fact, they were so highly sought after that they were almost hunted to the point of extinction. So as beavers became harder to find, people began seeking alternatives and eventually humans just kind of moved on. You might have heard that castorium is still being used as vanilla flavoring today, and although it's technically not a lie, it's also not quite true. In 2013, a popular food blogger made a post saying that beavers flavor a ton of foods at the grocery store with their little butthole. And naturally, the internet took that and ran. But the truth is, it would be quite a challenge to find anything at the grocery store with castorium in it at all. But it's actually not because people think it's gross. The reason is actually because there are now lots of laws protecting native wildlife, they can't just remove the castor glands like they used to. Instead, if you want to harvest any castorium, then the beavers need to be ethically milked. Now, if you'll excuse me. It's my turn to help make a scientific discovery.